All right, now let's talk about the main event because it had a similar vibe, right? You see a legend get beat up like that. It's a weird thing in this sport because you want to celebrate the youth, you want to celebrate the newcomer, you want to celebrate the fresh face, if you will, the new contender, a guy who's never had a chance to fight for a belt or win a UFC belt, of course. And then on the flip side, you see a legend like Frankie, a legend like Alistair Overeem, who, by the way, Alistair Overeem had won 2 in a row, had won 4 or 5, was potentially en route to beating Jairzinho Rozenstruik. He would be on a 5-fight winning streak at this point in his 40s. But holy smokes, like that was a one-sided fight, right? That was a beatdown from Alexander Volkov. Why was Volkov so dominant and so successful against Overeem? Because it looked like Overeem had nothing for him from the beginning.
You know what's kind of crazy? That for as bad as the Sandhagen Edgar fight was, the knockout,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like the Overeem fight was even worse
Because it was longer.
because it was extended and
Yeah.
you just saw the difference in the level, right? The one thing Frankie can rely on is like, well, what would have happened if I didn't get knocked out, right? He can lead. There's a question out there. There's no question that Alistair Overeem can beat Alexander Volkov today. I mean, from the very start of the fight, Volkov just pieced him up, man. And you see later in Overeem's career, he's done a good job of like shelling up, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
covering his head. But Volkov was wrapping around that guard and then throwing that jab up the middle and just broke his nose like quick. Like Volkov looked fantastic. And it's hard because when you have those guys, those legends, we tend to spend more time talking about them than the actual person that
Yeah.
put on the performance. It wasn't about what Alistair didn't do. It just showed you that Alexander Volkov is real and he's ready to go and compete with the best fighters in the world. And I will say this today. If you don't have a wrestling threat and you're fighting Alexander Volkov with the way that he has improved and the way that he's learned to manage space and distance with his power, they ain't beating him. I don't think any of these dudes are going to beat him if they can't get to him. I know Derek Lewis beat him and knocked him out, but Derek Lewis rushed him and he was losing the whole time. Caught him
Right.
with something. Um, Curtis Blades wrestled him the whole time in order to beat him, and then he couldn't take him down at the end of the fight. And Volkov was starting to find success on the feet. If you can't go take this man down consistently, you're going to find yourself in a lot of problems because this dude throws that nasty front kick that he beat Walt Harris with. And then that jab and that 1-2, bro, he smashed Overeem. It was never a competition. It was never in doubt. From the moment they started fighting and you saw him find his range and rhythm, you knew right away Alistair was in trouble and he was not going to win that fight. And I was happy when he went down because he would have just taken more and more damage.
Great stoppage by referee Jason Herzog, who continues to be one of the best in the sport. By the way, in my opinion, biggest difference between that Alexander Volkov of a couple fights ago, even the Greg Hardy fight, like it wasn't that impressive that he beat 15 minutes. It went the distance. And this Alexander Volkov, especially in the last 2 fights, Walt Harris and Alistair Overeem, he weighs 20 pounds more.
He looks
The guy has,
big, right?
yes,
His legs.
he used to weigh in 245, 247. Now he's weighing in 265 or so. So I think he's added muscle and you see the power. That guy is a problem. I'd like to see him fight the winner of the Jairzinho Rozenstruik Cyril Gane fight, which happens later on this month. I think that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Fresh matchup for both. I think Cyril Gane is a future contender as well. But man, that guy with that height, that reach, that power, that guy's a problem.
And he's
Alexander
aggressive
Volkov
now,
is a problem.
right?
Yes.
He's aggressive now. Like before Volkov, even in the Hardy fight, he was much too okay with the fight going the distance. He never really put his feet on the pedal to go and get Greg Hardy. The last couple fights, he went at Walt Harris. Every time he seemed to hurt Walt or felt like he was hurting Walt with anything, he would kind of empty the tank. And if Walt was able to fight back, he would back off. With Overeem, he wasn't just touching him. He was really setting down on things. And you could see it in Volkov. It's not the upper body. The upper body looks pretty similar. You have to look at his legs and his ass. He's so big now down low. And that's where the power comes from, right? It comes from the trunk. He's just sitting down on Overeem, touching him. And then because Overeem does this shell defense, he started coming up the middle with an uppercut, and he would go uppercut and then wrap the hook around the guard. And I'm telling you, I was so happy when Alistair fell. I was like, this is good for him so he doesn't take more damage from this big monster, Volkov.
You want to see him fight again? Or do you think he fights again?
Volkov.
No, Overeem.
Alistair. You know what? I think Alistair fights again. I do
Yeah.
think he fights again because it's what he does. And, talking to him last week before the fight, he said he was going to fight through the contract at minimum. But I really wish his approach was more, I'm going to ride this thing until I stop winning, and then I'm going to kind of be done.
Right.
You know, like he had 1-2 in a row, beat Jairzinho for 24 minutes and 35 seconds, you know, could have had been 5 in a row. I would have said fight it until you run into a person that's going to really beat you up, and then say I'm done. You know, he's got to have made a ton of money at this point. He's well known. He can go coach. I mean, I don't know. I wish after seeing that, I don't think he needs to fight again, but he will.
A lot of great performances, including Alexander Volkov and Corey Sanhagen. Shout out to Beneil Dariush with another great win, 6 in a row, and also for just being a Hall of Fame mensch, saying that he wanted his teammate to come in. Thought he was going to call someone out. In fact, he says that he wants his teammate to get signed by the UFC. So Beneil Dariush, one of the good guys in the sport, and
yes, he is.
continues
And Rafael Cordero, right?
Yeah.
Rafael Cordero and those guys are building some momentum, some new guys coming out of that team from Dariush to the light heavyweight kid that fought a little earlier in the card, submitted. I can't remember either of these guys' names right now, but I can't remember either name. But the kid fought well, right? Kid's 2-0. Marquez. His name was Marquez.
Yes.
2-0 in the UFC now, and getting a submission victory. Building some momentum. Hey, training Mike Tyson. This dude ain't lost in a minute. Rafael Cordero's on fire.
He's been around forever.